1 second. All right. Good morning, everybody. I hope everyone's having a good week. Had a good week. I mean, it's the end of the week. We are going to talk about private practice, self-employment type stuff today. Probably talk about some other stuff too, but Mary Jane Hall is here with us, and she does all the site visits for our practicums. So everyone should know her, but I always ask her to come at the beginning of the semester, just in case anyone has changes or needs to make changes to the practicum. It's kind of rare at this point, but it still happens. So Mary Jane, you can go through your little spiel, and if anyone has questions, this is a good time.
Okay, well, I'm happy to see everyone here this morning, and you're in Practicum 2 now, so that's great, and I hope everyone's having a good experience. I heard a lot of great things about all of you last semester, and I will be contacting your site supervisor again this semester for a phone conference. And this is really more of an update for Practicum 2, but we'll be talking about, you know, how you're participating in supervision and what responsibilities you have now, the type of clients you're seeing, and any areas that you've decided that you want to particularly focus on this semester, or if your supervisor feels like there's an area they want you to focus on. We talk about all of those kinds of things, and I write up a report and then send it in to Dr. Bedard. What I need to know for sure, though, is if anyone has any changes, either in site or site supervisor, and you can just call me or text me. I'm going to give you I know I gave you my number last semester, but let me give it to you again. And then when you text me, be sure and put your name in the text, because you're not in my contact list. I won't know who's texting me unless you put your name, and then just put the change if it's a change in site or site supervisor. So my phone number is 214-577-3731. 214-577-3731. And I think a couple of people have, or at least one person had emailed that they were going to have a change in site supervisor. So I just need to know that, so I don't spend a lot of time trying to call someone that is no longer supervising you. And, you know, because usually when I make a phone call, I don't get the person. I either get a receptionist or I get a voicemail, and then it's just a long process if I'm trying to call the wrong person. So I would appreciate that. And does anyone have any questions for me? Because that's the main thing I need from you this semester. And some of you have 2 sites. I will be contacting the same site supervisor that I spoke with last semester, because I contact one site supervisor, and it should be your primary site and primary supervisor. So any questions?
I have one, and
Okay.
this gets asked often, not every class, but some classes. Sometimes people want to know if they can see your report.
Certainly. Yeah. I mean, I'll submit it to you, and if you can pass it on to them. If a site supervisor says that they have concerns, my first question to them is, have you talked to the student about it? Because if they have a concern about something, you can't do anything about it if you don't know that it's a concern. And I always let Dr. Bedard or Dr. Johnson know if there is a concern. It's rare, but because most of you are doing a wonderful job, doing wonderful work with your clients, and I hear so many great things. But occasionally something comes up, and I always let Dr. Bedard and Dr. Johnson know, and try to get that taken care of. So,
Awesome.
But certainly, yeah, I just write down what we talk about, and if it's anything, I don't want to say negative, but if anything of concern, I make sure that you know about it, and you're certainly welcome to have a copy of the report that I send.
Thank you. We just get questions every once in a while about it.
Yeah, yeah. And it's just, you know, when I'm in the phone conference with your site supervisor, I just take notes about what they're saying. And, you know, I have some things I ask, like areas for growth and participation in supervision and current responsibilities, those kinds of things that they address in our conference. And I just, whatever they've said, I just write that up and send it in.
Awesome.
I
Does
think
anybody
I'm
have,
already getting a text from someone
yeah,
with change, so that's great.
good.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Well, it's great to see everyone. Great to see you, Dr. Bedard.
You too.
Can I make a comment real quick?
Sure.
Can y'all hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Good morning. Not a super huge morning person, so I hope this comes out okay. But there was some discrepancy, I believe, between the supervisor reviews and our grades in the practicum. I know quite a few students at my site, and myself included, were a little confused. Our supervisor gave us like 8 and 9s because she believes there's always room for improvement, which is true. And then we had a paper and I got like a 95 on the paper. I'll speak for myself. I guess other students can come forward if they want, but I got like an 80 on my review. And so that averaged out to like an 87.5, which is fine. I understand that students get grades, but I just feel like for future, because my supervisor was shocked, she didn't realize that that would equate to a B grade. So I just kind of wanted to point that out. My supervisor, Kelly Couture, is happy to speak with anyone, and this goes back to Prac 1, but I just wanted to kind of maybe prevent it from future so that it just feels like if we're doing A work, we should get an A in the course versus the B.
Okay. Look, let's put that to the side for a second. I do want to talk about it. Absolutely.
Okay.
And address it. If no one has any other questions for Mary Jane, we'll let you get on with your morning.
Okay, great. It's great to see all of you.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Let me talk about that, Tammy. I'm first of all, thanks for bringing it up. And I think we need to have open discussions about anything. I'm cool with all of it.
Awesome. Thanks. I apologize for bringing Mary Jane
No,
into it. I thought
no,
maybe she should be aware too.
no. She doesn't have anything to do with grading. She doesn't have anything to do with the
Okay.
classes. She doesn't have anything to do with evaluations. She doesn't have anything to do with any of those things. Let me just. I cannot speak for other classes or other professors, but I will say this, and I don't even think I said this in our intro class a couple of weeks ago. Let me just put to rest any worry about like grades. Everyone's going to get an A in this class unless you like stop seeing clients all of a sudden and like leave the
Disappear.
country or something. This class is not a academically heavy at all. And so I don't know, I can't speak to what happened before, but I can tell you we have 2 assignments that you turn in, a reflection paper and your actual paperwork like that you turned in for Prac 1, right? So your evaluation, your supervisor evaluation, and all your hours. Like I want all of your hours. Those are the 2 things that are required. You turn those in, you're going to be fine. So I would be, I mean, if I was you, I'd be concerned too. I don't, I've been where you guys are. I was an adult student with 2 kids at home and going back to school and doing supervision and getting hours, and I get it. I actually did it too. So if I would have share your concerns. But for this class, on purpose, it's academically light because you're trying to finish your hours, and that should be your only focus. So does that hopefully help? Does that make sense? Hopefully.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Any question about that? I'm glad you brought it up. I think it's good to bring it up. Anybody else have any concerns? I mean, y'all can bring stuff up. That's fine.
Good morning, Dr. Bedard.
Good morning.
I have a question. So for our hours, do you just want the hours that we accumulated in Prac 2, not Prac 1?
I want all your hours, every hour you've ever accumulated in your whole entire life. I want
Okay.
all of them. Yeah, because I have to have the final, that adds up to the final total. I have to have that. So, which brings me, I was going to bring this up today anyway. There's a couple of different things to think about with hours. Some people still do I used to do a spreadsheet because way back then, that's all there really was. There's apps you can use now that kind of help you keep track of hours and things like that. We have obviously, Amerton provides that document that you can use too. It doesn't really matter to me what you guys use as long as I have the total, like all the hours you've done. That's all that matters to me. So by the end of week 9, is when I shoot for. I'd like to have, everyone's hours. I'd like to have everything by week 9. Now, that doesn't mean, like, some of you are probably going to get done before that. Like, you're going to get done with your hours. If you want to do your reflection paper, you can do that today. That you can turn that in anytime. You can turn anything in anytime. There's no, like, you don't have to wait or anything like that. Just go ahead and turn it in. Everything's on Moodle. You just drop it in there. Drop your assignments in on Moodle. But yeah, I need all your hours, everything you've accumulated. Yeah, good question. Any other questions at all?
I have another question about
Yeah.
the hours, but not for Amerton. I saw on the BHEC website there was some type of like practicum documentation form. Is that something we have to send to you or Amerton?
Yeah. So at the end of when you do your application for licensure for your associate license, there's a checklist that you go through. One of the forms is a state form. I can't remember what it's called. It's a practicum form. Basically, it's the state's way of asking us if you finish your practicum. So you fill it out and then you send it to us and we sign it. Actually, our academic dean will sign off on it, and then and send it back to you. And that's what you put it in your application packet. And I'm gonna go over this a little bit more specifically probably next class, because we're gonna sleep between now and then, and we're gonna have a 2-week break, and everyone's gonna forget everything I'm saying right now, which is totally understandable. I'm gonna give you guys the email address to send it to, who to send it to. I'm gonna give you all that information so that you can have it. But yeah, it's a state form. It doesn't have anything to do with us. It's actually it's a state form, and you only have to do it once. Like all your application, once you do your application, then you're just renewing until you get your full licensure. So yeah, but that's a good question. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm glad you're looking out there. It's good. Y'all need to start looking on the sites and seeing what you need and what you need to do. You need to start doing that for sure. Because that's where your life is about to be. You're going to live on that state information from here on. Yeah. And keep your eyes out for any changes. Like there's some rule changes they're trying to put into effect right now. I think there's some CEU rule changes that they're talking about right now. There's some licensing changes. I haven't read them all yet, but you can kind of be on the lookout for those. If you go on the BHEC site, the state site, you can sign up for those emails, and they'll send you emails once a month if there's going to be changes or when the meetings are going to be and all those things. You can start getting those emails, and that would come to you whether you're LPC or LMFT, either one, doesn't matter. You'll get an email, and those are good to get. Sometimes the emails there's nothing there, but a lot of times they have pretty good information. They actually are doing a better job communicating, I think, overall with everyone. So, okay, good. Any other questions? Okay. So normally, when I go through kind of like private practice type stuff, I'll spend a little bit of time just kind of talking about it broadly. And then I'm going to talk specifically about like, setting fees and insurance and if you want to do that or not. And then usually kind of towards the end, we kind of have a question and answer time and we kind of talk through things. That's what I normally do. So that's probably what we'll do today. The first thing that I wanted to ask is if anyone has any cases they'd like to talk about. We can use this time too, just if there's a case that you're working on that you're kind of stuck with, or something you feel like is kind of hard and you're not sure what to do, or something you need help with. There's no pressure here. You don't have to do it. This isn't mandatory, but I'm going to start every class with those questions. If someone has one, awesome. We can talk through it. If you don't, that's great too. We'll just keep going. So does anyone have a case they'd like to talk about? Sarah does, because I can see, anytime I can see people's face, I know someone's about to talk.
Yeah. So I got handed a court-ordered case about 2 weeks ago
Okay.
for an instance of pyromania. Or he's not quite a pyromaniac, but him and his friends started lighting fires in a public space.
Mhm.
And they were supposed to go to juvie. Mom and dad hired a nice fancy lawyer and got the charges dropped way down. So we only have to do 6 hours of counseling, and then I think it's like 100 and something hours of community service.
Yeah.
But he very much does not want to be there in counseling, obviously. And I spoke with my supervisor about it because supposedly he needs some kind of fire safety.
I'm going to transition to talking a little bit about some private practice topics. And since our class is smaller in size, if I'm going along and anyone has a question, don't hesitate to like jump in and just interrupt me. It's fine. Sometimes when I have bigger classes, I wait till the end, but this is a smaller class. And I think I've had most all of you in other classes too, that I look at all the names. So if you have questions, just jump in and ask. I'm going to do a little bit of kind of scanning the research on private practice. There's not a ton. It's not really a highly researched subject at all. But I'm going to share. Hang on a second. Let me share my screen with everybody. So we're going to talk clinically, but also I'm going to talk a little bit, make my pitch for being an entrepreneur as a clinician. I'm going to kind of pitch that out. Here's the fascinating thing. So the first time I ever did a presentation on private practice was with the director of a clinic I was working at. He and I did this back in 2014. I think it's been almost 10 years. At that time, this was at a state conference, actually. At that time, there was like nobody was talking about private practice. There was very little information about it. Now there's like how-to videos all the time. There's plenty of people that know how to do it best, and there's plenty of people that can tell you how to make $5,000 million about building a private practice. There's tons of information now. Most all of the conferences you go to will have at least a handful of people talking about building a practice. So in the last 10 years, there's gone from, we've gone from no information to a ton of information about it. And so I'm just going to talk about it, some from my experience, and then some from just like talking about just kind of what's out there and what to think about. Nothing that I'm showing you today is exhaustive. I am sure that there's other information that I don't know about for sure. There's even books written now about it, like how to build a practice. There's tons of information. So it's definitely not hard to find. I think the big part that's changed in the last 10 years is the fact that we've had COVID, and now virtual therapy has become a lot more accepted than it was before. That's probably one big, huge shift for sure. So there's definitely a lack of research. In 2013, there was one whole issue of the Journal of Mental Health Counselors devoted to private practice, and that was in 2013. I have not seen that happen since, but there's definitely articles now out there with different people talking through different models. So when we think about forms of practice, so this will be the case for all of you, whether you're an associate, but especially when you get into having your full licensure. You can be a sole proprietor, like you're self-employed, you're kind of on your own maybe, or you're working as a contractor, as a 1099 person with another practice. You can do a partnership, you can become a corporation, and I'm going to talk about all these specifically as we go through. There's all these kind of things to think about in terms of like if you want to have your own space, if you want to join someone else's space, do you want to find a niche? How do you go about networking? Because networking is still just as important now as it ever has been. How do you do that? The big shift in our world has come this kind of world of digital marketing, which is newish the last 5 or 6 years. Especially COVID probably escalated digital marketing in a lot of ways. So digital marketing is kind of like networking online, basically, kind of similar to that. We know that burnout rates are lower with people that are in practices or with other people because you're in with other folks and you're able to kind of process with people together and not by yourself. One interesting note about that, I've got a friend of mine right now. He and I were talking about this very thing this week. I have noticed in myself in the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, more what I would call ADHD symptoms in myself in terms of focus, motivation, thinking patterns, some executive functioning things. And he said something really interesting and reminded me that if you follow some of the research in ADHD, a lot of the folks like Russell Barkley, they kind of talk about ADHD is not necessarily an overstimulation problem. In a lot of ways, it's an understimulation problem. And so I do a lot of virtual therapy. And so I'm in my same room, same screen every day, doing the same thing every day, instead of getting out and doing things that kind of stimulate my mind in different ways. And my friend was saying, it might be interesting to kind of think through if part of the symptoms that I'm feeling are just from this kind of understimulation part that's happening, which is kind of interesting. It goes back to what we're talking about with burnout, which is a self-care plan, like having a plan for self-care. And if you are having trouble with, like in my case, maybe I need to change up some things I'm doing to kind of work through some of the things I'm feeling and thinking. But we know that the more positive environment that's created inside of a practice, the less burnout there is. There's a couple of these things that I'm going to talk about specifically together. This one is from 2009, and I have found this to be true now still. Private practice is really a blend of healthcare and business, small business. Right now, you guys have been going through the practice of learning how to be in mental health, to be practitioners, clinicians in the mental health sphere. We have done nothing really to talk about the business aspect of what it takes to be in that sphere on purpose, because we just don't have enough time. We have classes we have to teach that are mandated by the state. We have to do them in a certain way. I know that some of us do try to teach aspects of kind of this kind of business mindset in their classes. But in terms of like thinking about, you're really kind of two people, you're a clinician and a business person. You're doing both things together. And that mindset is a little bit important. What I have found in the past, students that come from a business world that jump into the clinical world don't have as hard a time making that shift. It's a little bit easier. But if you've never really had that business mindset, and when I say business mindset, I don't mean like Wolf of Wall Street. We're talking about like being just a good, um, just doing some things that are solid business type moves, and we'll talk about some of these. One of the biggest pieces is being an entrepreneur and being innovative and thinking outside the box as an entrepreneur. Whether that means, how do I network with people? If I think I know kind of what my niche is going to be, I want to network inside that niche and try to generate clients inside that niche. If I knew I was going to work with kids, it'd be super smart to meet with as many pediatricians as I could, or at least those offices, to get on those referral lists. Meet with as many school administrators as I can in the area I live, to get on as many of those lists as I can. If I'm going to work with couples, one thing I did when I first started is I networked with a lot of salons in the area, because they talk to people all the time and they get lots of folks complaining and talking. And I got quite a few referrals from salons for a long time. I did a lot with churches for a long time and kind of networked with churches. Specifically, I worked with a couple of different pastors that were in charge of big marriage ministries. I networked with them, with folks. So it just kind of depends on what your niche is going to be, but you have to kind of think through, okay, how do I generate something? And the bottom line is, you're selling yourself. And when we sell ourselves, we're basically telling someone, hey, here's maybe an issue that you're having, and I can help you with that issue. And here's how I help you with that issue. It's kind of basic. So again, when we're talking about a business mindset, when we're selling ourselves, we're basically saying, I know that you're having this issue, which people come to you with an issue. I can help you with it, and here's how I do it. And make them see, basically, if I work with you, it's going to help me. Right? Does that make sense? I mean, that's kind of what we're talking about. And you have to kind of get your head around that, that business part. It's usually easy for us to get our head around the clinical part, but some people have trouble jumping from the clinical part to the business part when we know we're going to start taking money for that service. In the past, one of the things that I've heard students talk about the most is maybe sometimes feeling uncomfortable charging, X amount for therapy, when it doesn't seem like you should charge that much, or that's how much you should ask people to spend. That is a shift, and that's a shift that you have to kind of make in your focus, and realize that you're not selling, widgets. You're selling a service to someone. And inside of that service, think about it. Inside of the service that you're selling is all your education, all your experience, all your knowledge and know-how, and the fact that you know different techniques to help people work through different issues. That's the service that you're selling. That whole kind of ball there. So that part is, I think, is really important to kind of think about. I kind of went through that. This is a quote that I've used for a long time. Practitioners with the spirit of entrepreneur are the most successful in private practice. And it's true. It's a mindset where you try to create opportunities. One of the big shifts in the mental health world over the past probably 10 years is moving into, helping not just in the therapy room, but can I do things like give presentations outside of the therapy room? Right now, Dr. Milliken and I in February are going to do I guess it's technically a seminar, but it's really going to be more of like a self-care kind of meet, like a lunch and learn kind of deal with the city of Dallas. So there'll be hundreds of folks on this Zoom call that we're going to do. So that would be an example of like, the topic is anxiety and stress in the workplace. When I work in that field, I work in that area right now every day. And so I can take that kind of knowledge and experience and use it in that way so that one, really, we're going to do this for Amberton. So potentially people know, hey, Amberton's here. This is what we do. Here's our focus. This is what we help students learn. And that's a great advertisement for Amberton. But it also, you know, in some ways, I've done presentations at churches. I've done presentations at like club meetings. I've done presentations I did a presentation for mom groups. Oh, this is crazy, but at one point about 7 or 8 years ago, I worked with several new moms that were in postpartum depression. Why, as a white male person, did I get this? I just worked with one or two, and it worked really well. And they gave my name to their friends, and I ended up with several of them. And all of a sudden, I found myself at a mommy and me group doing a presentation just about like in general kind of some coping strategies. So you have to kind of look for those opportunities and be able to basically say yes to them. Now, having said that, not everyone likes to speak in front of people. Not everyone wants to kind of jump and do that stuff. I don't mind doing that. It's easier for me. There's other ways to network with people to kind of gather a network. One strategy that you can apply is you can sit down and write down every person that you can think of that you possibly have some network tie to. And that's probably quite a few people, quite a few, it's probably a lot of people. Now, those folks that you write down, you might not be able to be their therapist because there's a dual relationship there, but they know people and they're willing to refer. So that's another way. And then you contact those people on the list and say, hey, here's what I'm doing. I just wanted to kind of pick your brain about this and just kind of let you know that I'm out here. Now, that's especially important if you're going to know you're going to be on your own, you're going to have your own thing. If you're joining a practice, sometimes that practice has their own marketing strategy, their own advertising that they do. And so it makes that part just a little bit easier, if that makes sense. So now let me take a step back. Guys, I've talked really fast here at the beginning. Any questions about any of those things that I'm kind of bringing up? Because I'm just kind of giving like a broad overview here. Okay. So here's what I'd like to do for about 5 or 6 minutes. I'm going to put you guys in groups. Excuse me. And all I want you to do is I want you to just kind of think through, what would be your top 3 questions you would want to ask about starting a practice or being part of a practice? What questions would you have? And we're going to use some of those questions to kind of carve out the direction we're going here the next few minutes. So I'm going to give you guys 5 or 6 minutes to do that. And then we'll jump back in. So top 3 questions. What'd you figure out?
So I went to my husband and I asked him,
Yeah.
what do we have, like, what's the most important 3 questions about private practice? So we came up with, first of all, insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And second is advertisement.
Mm-hmm.
And third, the network. So, but in general, I feel comfortable about the marketing or advertisement and the network. But the biggest issue is the insurance and how to deal with insurance.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good. Yeah, we're going to talk about those for sure. Does anyone else have any other questions, different ones?
I have one that's kind of related to that. Private pay seems to be less accessible now. I know in our practice, we've had a lot of people call and not book a session because they are looking for insurance. And it seems like there's a lot more therapists who take insurance now and with the economy. So I'm just wondering what you think in terms of the future of like private pay.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, we're going to talk about that too. Absolutely. Yeah. How do you set your fee? Yeah. Good. Any other questions?
Is it common to sign or be asked to sign non-compete clauses when joining a practice or a group? And what should you be careful about term length or, any
Yeah.
red flags that you should
Yeah.
watch
We're
for?
going to, good. That's a great question. I'm glad that came up too. We're going to talk about contracts for sure. And that's especially true for your associate, even when you're an associate. So yeah, that's a good question. Absolutely. Yeah. Non-competes are, it depends on the type of practice, but yeah, we're going to talk about that too. Good. Good. Any other questions?
I think also the typical split, like a 60-40 split. Like I was offered a 60-40 split, and I'm going to also have to pay for supervision, and I don't know. And I'm just going to do that part-time while I start up my private practice, like going to go straight to private practice, but do that to sort of earn something. So anyway, don't know what I think that's a normal split, but it feels unfair, like 60% just for providing me a space and potential clients, which I still have to go get myself. So
Yeah, let's jump into this because this is a style of practice question. So let me lay out a couple of different things for you guys to think about. If you are going to join a facility, like a treatment facility, this won't necessarily apply to you necessarily, but if you're going to join a practice, this will absolutely apply to you. The most common, what Brian and Dana are talking about right now are practices there where there's an owner or owners at the top, and then they hire contract therapists or counselors to work in the practice. So you become what's known as a 1099 employee, right? You're contracted with that practice to provide services, and they will provide the client, like they'll provide X amount of things, whatever's in the contract, and you will provide the services. It is a common in that type of practice to have a split of the commission or the profit that you would get. In this case, Dana was talking about 60-40. She gets 60, the practice gets 40. It's also 70-30 happens. There's 50-50 out there too, as well. It kind of depends on their business structure, right? So depending on the business structure, they will dictate what that split is, and that will be included in your contract. If we talk about the actual contract, it would always be smart, number one, to read it for sure. And if it's a 60, in this case, we'll just use 60-40. Sometimes the practice will also dictate what you can actually charge as well. So you kind of already know what you're going to make per client. And if you look at your contract, you want to know what 40% that you're giving back to them, what does that 40% cover, right? Does it cover administrative costs? Does it cover marketing, advertising? Does it cover supervision? I agree with you. I think the lack of supervision in this case seems a little bit weird to me.
it's only a lack of supervision because she's an LMFT supervisor, and I will be an LPC associate, so
then
she
that's it.
can't supervise me.
That's
So
it.
that's I mean, I'm sure there will be some supervision anyway because I'm working in her practice, but I'll have to have a formal supervision arrangement. Therefore, I'll have to pay for it, which I need anyway because I'll need that for my private practice. So it's kind of almost a moot point, but it's still, I don't know. It is not really that relevant, I guess.
Well, it is because if you're in a practice you're paying 40% back, but that 40 doesn't count supervision, you're not actually making 60%.
Right. And I still have to pay for all my own like Psychology Today and stuff profiles.
That's
So
what I'm, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's what
yeah.
I'm saying. So this is a great example of what I was talking about earlier, having a business mindset. At the basis, okay, at the foundation of what we're talking about right now, let's put numbers with this. Okay. I'm going to make up these numbers just for the sake of discussion. If you charge $100 in this case, you automatically know that you're only going to get $60. Okay. Plus, you have to pay for supervision. Plus, you have to pay for whatever other costs. You might have other administrative costs that you incur.
Plus taxes, because if you're a 1099,
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not even. I'm not even to that yet. I'm not even to that yet. So here's what that means. As a 1099 person, you pay payroll tax, federal tax, and all your Social Security or FICA. You pay all of it. You pay all of 15%. Typically, if you're a W-2 employee, they pay half Social Security and you pay half, right? As a self-employed person, that $60 has to stretch to cover all of those things. Okay? If you're a sole proprietor, that's what that would mean. Now, the payroll tax used to be 15%. I think it's different. I don't know what it is now. I feel like it's 12, but I could be wrong about that. I kind of think I'm wrong about that. Anyway, it's significant. So, the reason why I'm talking about it this way is this is a way that you can get hours. If you know you're going to get a lot of hours, some people will be willing to give up that 40% or more just to get your hours. Some people are, and you can do that. And so what does that mean in terms of like living on something? So you would have, so if you knew you were going to get $60 per client, but your cost to acquire a client and keep a client, I'm making this up, okay, is $10, then you're getting $50 per client, right? That's after taxes and everything. Again, I'm making all this up. So now you're getting $50. How many clients do you need to see a week to make a monthly X amount of money? Right? So I'm talking about it just at a foundational level, right? Now, that doesn't include if you want to take a week off somewhere or if you want to take some days off somewhere. Because as a self-employed person, if you don't work, you don't get paid. Does that make sense? So this is that kind of, you have to think through that type stuff. Now I'm making this up at $100. Dan, I don't know what that practice charges. My assumption is probably not $100.
Yeah, they were charging 160, but they're having a really, really hard time getting private pay clients now. So they've dropped several of the newer associates down to like 120. And then some of them are going even less than that. So yeah. But when I look at everyone's schedule, like I can see everybody, like how busy everybody is. And with the exception of like my supervisor and one other person who's been there a long time, people don't see more than about 6 or 7. I mean, I only see about 7 per week, 7 or 8 per week. And other people that are charging more than me because my rate's lower are only seeing, maybe 5, 6, 8 people per week. And I don't know how they could possibly make a living like that.
Well, you can't. That's the easy answer. You can't make a living like that.
Yeah, right.
So here's a couple of things to think about. Now I'm not trying to like oversimplify this, but I do want to keep it a little simple for our discussion. I mean, it is at kind of a bottom line kind of thing we need to think about. You can, as an associate, excuse me, you're kind of hindered a little bit, so to speak, versus when you get your full licensure in terms of what you can and can't do. But one thing to think about would be there's different types of ownership groups. Another type of ownership group, and I was a part of one of these, is where everyone cost shares, so you're not paying a percentage. to the owners, everyone shares the cost of whatever, whatever the practice is. Like I paid a set cost per month and it was way less than, I think it was like 15% of what I made or something like that. So I kept 85% of what I made. You can do that too. You can try to negotiate that percentage with them. Sometimes they won't do that. That's fine. One thing Brian brought up in terms of the contract is there are practices that do have non-compete clauses in their contract. My legal understanding of that is that they're a little gray, and here's why. Technically, because this happened to me as well, technically, when you leave a practice and it's an owner-based practice, the owner keeps those files of the clients. They're not your files, right? They keep those files. So technically, you don't take those clients with you. That's what that non-compete's about. Sometimes it's like a certain mileage. You can't get clients in, or, within X of miles of my practice, or sometimes it's like you can't take any of these clients. Here's the gray area. If those clients that you're working with want to come to you, they can. They can choose to go anywhere they want. Like right now, even my clients that I have, they don't want to work with me anymore. They can go meet with anybody else. The client can choose, right? That's what makes it a little bit gray to a certain extent. Now, I have heard of practices going after people for having clients that they saw in that practice and then saw them in their own private practice. That does happen. So reading that non-compete is important. Not every practice has a non-compete. That's important to know too. One of the practices I was a part of as I was coming off the tail end of my associate license did not have a non-compete, but the owner said he owned the actual files, which I was like fine with. And I didn't bring it up that he didn't, in his language of the contract, did not say anything about non-compete. So I ended up taking quite a few clients. I didn't take, they came with me, but they left there and came to where I was. That can happen and that can happen anyway. That can happen to any of us. So reading the contract is very important. And you have to decide on, do you want to get your hours quick and maybe you'll make less money, or do you want to try to do both at the same time? That's your decision. Now, sometimes that comes down to making a living. I was the sole provider, so like I worked like 3 jobs. I did lots of stuff when I first started. I had a practice I was working for, and I started my own practice in another totally different area, and I combined those two in one practice when I kind of got some experience in that area I was in. Let me jump to one thing when it comes to when you have your full licensure and thinking about being self-employed. Let me talk about that really quickly. And I would also encourage you to watch that video with Chris Kendall about this, because he's going to talk way more specifically about this. It's well worth your time to watch it, I think, because he talks about building business, but he also talks about what it means to be self-employed. Whether you have a practice or not, if you're always considered self-employed until you do what I did about 6 years ago, and I became a corporation. So I have an S corp. It's Chris Bedard PLLC. So PLLC is what Texas sees. So LLCs are the traditional licensed limited liability corporation. As professionals with a license, we are PLLCs, which you can't be until you have your license. Okay, so in the state of Texas, you're a PLLC. Okay, that's what the state says. That takes $300 to create a name, and it's not very expensive.
So is that like your LPC associate license, or is that your full licensure?
That's your full.
That's what was unclear to me.
That's your full. My understanding is that's your state license. That's my understanding.
Okay.
But my suggestion would be, if you have a lawyer friend or know someone in the legal world, ask them, because they'll be able to tell you specifically. Because there's been changes to who can have a private practice and who can't. Used to be LMFT associates were the only ones that could have an actual private practice. Now, LMFT associates and LPC associates can have a private practice, but you're still practicing under a supervisor. You're not practicing on your own. So that has changed. So that's what makes me hesitant to answer that fully, because I think there's some change in some language there, probably. In other words, when you name your practice, whatever you name it, that gives you one legal veil of protection, right? Then you said, I no longer am using my personal accounts for things. I'm using my LLC, my business account. That gives me a legal veil of protection. That's one veil. That's very important. Very important. Because if something goes wrong and you get sued, they're not just going to sue. They're going to do their best to sue all of you, not just some of you. Okay. So that's one veil. The S corp, or the corporation, is what the IRS sees, the federal government sees. And that's you basically saying, I'm incorporated, and this takes a lawyer to set up, and it's a little bit more expensive, about $2,500, $2,000, but it'll save you a ton of money in the long run. That's you saying, I am now an S corp as Chris Bedard P LLC. I make 60,000. I'm making these numbers up. As a therapist, the average, and this is what the IRS language is, on average, what does someone in your industry make? I make $60,000 a year. So I will get taxed on that $60,000. I set up a payroll. I pay myself. I pull taxes from each paycheck, whether I pay myself monthly, weekly, bi-weekly, doesn't matter. Pull taxes from that, send that to the government, the federal government, every month or every week or every 2 weeks. And I make that $60,000, and I'm taxed on that $60,000 every year. What if I actually make 90,000? I don't get taxed on that 30,000. I get taxed on the 60. So it's another legal veil over on top of you. And if you have an S corp, your payroll tax is less as well. So you're actually paying less in taxes. This sounds like it's illegal. It's not. Every lawyer, doctor, therapist I know, everyone does this. This is a legal way to save on taxes, but also to make sure you get a salary, and kind of a set salary. My suggestion would be always talk to a CPA about this, because some of these rules change every year. Tax law changes all the time. So you definitely want to be up to date. Like I have a CPA that I've worked with for a long time. They kind of keep me kind of in the parameters. The video that I've put online with Chris is he does a great job of outlining all of it. He gets really specific with it. There's even people that ask questions that he answers during it. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because I made so many mistakes when I first started that I just don't want anybody to make the same mistakes. I didn't understand about taxes. I didn't understand about FICA. I'd have always been a W-2 employee. I'd never been self-employed. I'd never been a 1099 contractor. Right. So now when I make a deal, when I do work for someone, they work with Chris Bedard PLLC, not Chris Bedard, the person. They work with my practice, with my business. I set my contract up with my business. So all my pay comes through my business. So I tax myself as the pay comes in. Does that make sense? That's kind of what I do. It's the same as any other professional service. Most all the professional services do this, or do it this way. The only reason you don't need to do that is if you work for a company and you're a W-2 employee. Then you don't have to worry about any of that stuff, because they take the tax out, they take the FICA. It's just like a normal, kind of normal working environment. Does that make sense? Like I work for Amberton as a W-2 employee, as full time, so I don't have to worry about doing that. But in my practice, I'm Chris Bedard PLLC. Does that make sense? What I'm saying? Hopefully.
Yeah. Can I add some comments to that?
Sure.
I'm an accountant. I'm not a CPA. Work with a CPA. I do all the books on people that come to him don't have books. I put it all together. So we work very closely. I'm just going to give you some thoughts on it. One thing, you could incorporate yourself with the state. You do not have to pay someone a lot of money.
No, 300 bucks will do it with the state. Yeah, you can do it
Yeah,
with the state.
350, something like that. I would
Yeah.
suggest you do it yourself. First step, though, people forget, is just see if your name is already taken.
Mhm.
And it shows that it's not, and it'll be on the website. You can do that. Then you file your paperwork. When you get it back, then you'll have your number and everything. You file with the state to be an S corp. And I think you had said that it's a lot of money. It's not. It's one form. It's the IRS. I think it's 2553. It could be 2883. I can't remember. But there's just a form electing to be an S corp. Now, the date that you do this or you get accepted, you have to file an S corp tax return. So be careful. You really don't want to file it December 31st or right before that, because if you're accepted by the IRS, you've got to file and pay, probably because you won't know how to do that tax return yet. You'll have dual tax returns. You've got one for yourself and you've got one for the corporation, which flows into, which will, as an S corp, you're going to flow into. So try to do it if you can. If it's, January is better than the end of December. And make sure you get a notification back from the IRS that they have accepted that form and you are now an S corp, because if not, it causes problems and it's really, really bad right now. You can always go back if they say they never got it and they're trying to redo your tax return. You can allow them to backdate your thing. So it's not as expensive. That form it's free if you do it yourself. Luckily, my friend, the CPA, doesn't charge me for all this stuff and your tax, but you're going to have two tax returns to file every year. And it's not going to be April. It's going to be March 15th and it's going to be September 15th, not October. So it's not the same schedule as the other. Now, also his viewpoint, he has never paid himself a salary. And this is a gray area. And I've been at parties, CPAs, I get all kinds of answers. Every one of your CPAs will probably give us all a different answer, but some people don't pay themselves a salary. All of it gets pushed through and you avoid that 15.3% payroll tax. Now, if you don't, you're not adding in to your Social Security for later in life. For me, I don't care. I'm older, but some of you who are young, you may want that and you may not. Maybe you'll take that 15.3% and invest it well. Now, also, part of the grayness on that practice is the IRS has never gone to court to define what a reasonable salary is. And it says you must pay yourself a reasonable salary. My friend in 30 years has never been approached about it. And he said, well, I'll just say, I don't know if I'm going to make an income this year or not. But, for me to be conservative, I'd probably pay myself something less, like 30 or 40,000 a year. But just to have something, but you don't have to. I'm just saying, I don't know what the tax consequences are later down the year. Talk to your CPA about that, but just be aware, of that situation and why it's out there. So
there's not much consequence. I've done that before.
Yeah, and we wondered if they are starting to go in that direction several years ago, maybe like 4 years ago. They really started hammering businesses for not filing the 1099s. And I think they're kind of starting to keep track of it. 1099s, there's a huge penalty. It used to be $50 for every one you didn't send out if they found out about it. I've never even seen anyone ever be audited for this, but now it's $500 for each one you don't send out. So if you're an owner, business owner, and you have 1099 employees that make over 600, please be sure you do, the 1099s, because there could be penalties. So that's what I know. I think, you can do a lot of this stuff yourself. You don't have to get a CPA. Maybe.
Thank you. Thank you, Paula. I appreciate that information. That's super helpful.
Yeah.
Super
If anybody
helpful.
needs help on setting up QuickBooks or something, I'll give you a free session and we'll talk about it if you're interested in doing something like that.
Also, I just want to say, if you don't pay yourself a salary, you can't contribute to, like, you don't have earned income, then you can't contribute to like a Roth IRA or a SEP IRA or anything. So it does have consequences there as well.
You can't contribute through that practice. You can contribute through other
No,
things.
If you have
if
no
you're
earned
hired,
income, you cannot.
if you're hired as a W-2 with another company, you can contribute
Yes,
through that
that's
company.
true. You have to have
Not-
earned income. That's what I'm
Right.
saying. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
part of what we're talking about right now, I don't want to, let's don't get confused about a couple of things. Everything, all the information you guys are getting is good. This is all really good information. Just remember that it's a different world being self-employed than being in a W-2 world. That's the biggest piece. It's just a different world. Now, having said that, and Paula alluded to this actually, if you end up, some of you probably will do this. I know I have other students that are doing this right now. If and when you end up starting your own practice, your own business, then you do have to take further, like she was saying, and you start contracting with people, then that's a whole other set of responsibilities that you have to be mindful of as well. My suggestion is always try to find a Paula, or in my case, I had Chris, like a CPA or someone that can guide you through that process. All of my stuff is automatic. I have a CPA firm that works with me, and they do all of my filing for me automatically, my business filings every year, which is just easy for me because I just don't want to do it. I don't want to deal with it. You can do it on your own if you really want, or you can get help with it. My point about all of this is that there's more than one way to go about doing this. You just have to kind of educate yourself about it. And in my experience, as I've gone through teaching in this program, we don't ever talk about any of these things during the program. And it's usually we talk about it now during our practicum time. And that's mainly because we just don't have time, because there's lots of great information out there. We just don't talk about it that much. And so I think it's just something we need. I just want us to be able to talk about it. I do want to shift gears a little bit because I don't want to run out of time. I want to talk about insurance paneling really quickly. And if I don't get through everything today, I'll pick some stuff up next time. And people have asked these questions too today, and I've had other students talk about it in terms of like, okay, should I be on an insurance panel? Should I just be self-pay? What's the best direction to go? You can do whatever you want. It's up to you. I've got friends that started a self-pay route. They started with a sliding scale. They kind of built their practice off of that. And then after they got us so far in, they started stopping the sliding scale and kind of had a set fee. And then they've kind of increased that fee over time. I've got friends that have done that. On average, it's 18 to 20 months to kind of build that type of practice. On average, it takes about that long. And it just depends on also on marketing and networking and how much you work and how hard you hustle. I mean, all of that matters as well. So setting a fee, there's lots of ways to set your fee. If you really wanted to do a lot of work, you could go on a Psychology Today, let's say, and look what every counselor, therapist in your radius charges and what they do, and then average that. You can do that. I've had students that have done that before. You can say, no, I'm going to set my fee at $100 or $120 or whatever. I mean, you can just arbitrarily do it. You can also do it by way of saying, here's how much I think I want to make or how much I need to make. And you can kind of do it that way and base it off the amount of clients you want to see during a week. One of the things I would encourage you to think about, whether you choose self-pay or insurance, either way. And if you don't know this now, you'll discover it. Some people are okay seeing 25 or 30 clients a week. Some people are not. That'll burn some people up. Some people are more like 15 or 20. So that might inform you or kind of give you some information about what you want to charge or if you want to be on insurance or not. Okay. I've got one friend that sees 35 or 40 a week. He's been doing it for long, 10 or 15 years. It's no problem for him. I've got other friends that are like, I can do 15. That's it. I mean, it really depends on what you can do. So that's kind of and the type of client that you have and the type of work that you do. And, seeing 10 or 15 or 20 clients inside of like traumatic experiences is one thing. I mean, can be very heavy type stuff. Anyone can do X amount of clients per week for so long but can you do that? Like, can you sustain that over a period of months and years? So you have to think about that. Some of you might kind of know that now. That's great. Like in your practices, maybe, if you know you see 15 or 20 and that's kind of where you're at, that's fine. It's not uncommon to be able to see more as you get more experience too. That's not uncommon. As you get used to kind of taking notes and kind of doing the administrative pieces that comes with each client and kind of doing the work with them. And as you get more comfortable in whatever model you use, you might see more clients. That's not uncommon. That happens too. But if we want to build a practice quickly, mostly people will jump into the insurance world. So to do that, it's a lot easier now than it used to be. That's for one thing. Now you can do most insurance paneling electronically through that insurance company, United, Blue Cross, Aetna, Cigna, whoever. There's dozens and dozens of insurance providers. For example, Blue Cross, no, I think it was United actually. It might have been Aetna. I can't remember now. It's been so long. But some providers do one, like Blue Cross might have Blue Cross medical providers, but they might use a totally different mental health provider that you would have to get credentialed with, kind of stuff. So you have to pay attention to that too. The reason why I say you can build a practice fairly quickly is you'll be marketed and networked through their websites. So when people go on and look for coverage, because they're going to go on their, they'll go to the Blue Cross webpage, look for a mental health provider, your name will pop up, they'll call you. It's just a easier marketing to do, or United or Aetna or whoever. So you usually get a little more traction that way, for sure. Otherwise, you're generating your own advertising, which there's ways to do that too. The one thing to think about when you go through their process, you'll get vetted. You'll have to send them information. You do an application. It's kind of a back and forth. And then you'll get a contract. And they'll send it's a long contract. They'll send it to you. Always read the contract for two things. Number one, just kind of like basics like information, but also their reimbursement rates will be listed on the contract. And they're always less than what you think, because they base their reimbursement rates on the Medicare rate. It's based off that rate. So for example, at my last check, so this could be wrong, but at my last check with Blue Cross, which is about 80% of insured folks in Texas, corporate insured folks, their reimbursement rates for individual sessions were about $87. The reimbursement rates for family or couples was about $75. Why is it less? I don't know. Other than they don't understand systems and they don't understand relationships. But they can charge whatever they want, or they can reimburse whatever they want. Cigna's a little bit less. Aetna's a little bit less. United's a little bit more, in my experience. United's individual reimbursements around 110 or so. The couples is around 91, couples and families, roughly. You can negotiate with them that rate. You can do that. You can go on and try to negotiate up if you want. You can do that. Sometimes you'll be able to do it, sometimes not, but you can do that. The reason why I'm bringing this up is the upside of that is you'll know what your reimbursement is. So if you have 10 Blue Cross individual clients, that's $870 a week. You just kind of know what your rate is. You know what your reimbursement is. But my rate's $175 self-pay. If I'm using Blue Cross, I'm getting $87. What does that mean for me? I got to have 2 Blue Cross for every 1 self-pay. That's the rub. They don't care what your rate is. You don't get paid your rate, and your clients are not responsible for the difference. That's actually illegal. It's called insurance fraud. That's very important to realize, because I had friends that tried to charge more, and I have actually heard of practices that do that, and that's insurance fraud. You cannot do that. They actually tell you on the EOB, the benefits page, they actually say the client is not responsible for whatever that difference is, because they'll give you a breakout of what you charge. So I charge $175 per session. I put that on my claim form, they put what they reimburse, and then whatever's left is that whatever $70, they put that on there, and they'll say client is not responsible for this portion. The client is only responsible for whatever their copayment is, or if they have co-insurance, which is another form of copayment. That's kind of a new thing in the last 5 years. So having said that, reason why I'm bringing this up is when you get your contract with the insurance company, you'll know what your reimbursement rate is. You'll know, and it's a set rate. You'll get a little bump every year, like 50 cents or 25 cents of a bump every year. It's because they're so nice and generous. Here's the reason why I no longer use Blue Cross. This happened to me 4 times, three times 1 year and 1 time like a separate year. I saw clients in like January, February, March, got paid out with Blue Cross. And in September, I got a letter from Blue Cross saying after an audit of our books, we realized that those clients were not covered under this policy. This has been months later. So they deducted that $800, I think it was $900. So it was about $2,700 I lost from those 3 specific clients. They just took it back. Even though they were authorized, they paid it. And this was 6 months later. So technically what that means is if I was wanting to get that money, I would have had to go where? Back to my clients that I'd already terminated with, that I've already worked with, and say, oh, by the way, you guys owe me $900. Which I never saw any of that money. That happened to me 4 times, 3 times 1 year. And then this is all pre-COVID too. So at that point I was like, oh, this is really frustrating. And I actually called Blue Cross and sent letters, and I was like, hey, is there a way to avoid this and get pre-authorization, which I did. Didn't matter, because if they come back and say, oh, by the way, they weren't actually covered then, they'll get that money back. That happened to me, like I said, 4 different times. So at that point I was kind of like, well, I'm not going to mess with that anymore. Now that doesn't mean you should, I mean, that doesn't happen all the time. I think it's a little better now because they do a better job of vetting. But that was something that happened to me, and I'm just bringing it up because it was a little bit frustrating. I actually know a provider that mysteriously got dropped from a panel, and they were owed like 18 grand from that particular provider. But it was a clerical mistake. They got dropped. It's a digital error in their computer system, and they had to fight for like, I think, a month, and they finally got reinstated and got the money, but it took like 3 or 4 months. 15 grand's maybe not a lot to some people, but in a practice, that's a lot of money. So it's just, these are just things that just part of that insurance world. It's just part of it.
Can we get paneled for insurance when we're LPC associates, like in our own private practice, or do we, because I've heard that you can do it through somebody else's practice where they're paneled, but like working on your own as an LPC associate, I heard you couldn't do that. Is that true?
That's my understanding too. I've had students tell me that's not true. I mean, that's a question for the insurance company. In the past, they've not paneled associates. And as far as the group practice, like groups do have group panel, like they're part of a group practice. That I don't know enough about that part to know. My assumption would be you make a call to the insurance company, they'll be able to tell you, or they should be able to tell you that. I don't think you can be paneled as an associate. Now, one big thing that just happened for LPCs and LMFTs and social workers is now we can all accept Medicaid and Medicare as part of our full licensure. That's actually a big deal if you want to go that route. I bring that up because people are getting older, and they call it geriatric therapy. It's kind of a stupid name, I think, but that's what they call it. Working with folks that are in their 60s, 70s, 80s that use Medicare. I mean, that could be a huge niche, and there's a lot of people that are doing the work. I have about 4 or 5 clients right now in their 70s, which is that wasn't happening for me 10 years ago. It's happening more now, but we can actually take that now. That's actually a big deal. That was a law that was just passed recently, so that's kind of a big deal in our world. But in terms of being paneled as an associate, my understanding is that is not possible. I've had people tell me it was. I don't know that 100%. I would say go check. I don't think it's possible, but you can check. So the question you have to ask yourself is, okay, if I want to build a practice faster than slower, probably insurance paneling is the way to go. Because way Dan was talking about this too. People want to use their insurance. If they have it, they want to use it. There are few and fewer people that are doing self-pay, although they're out there. They will do that. And so if you want to build it slower than, faster than slower, maybe insurance is the way to go. Otherwise, you're hustling and, finding niches and doing other things. You can do that too. I mean, there's multiple ways to do it now, multiple streams of income. That word side hustle became popular during COVID. I don't know why, but it did. I mean, that's basically what I'm talking about. If you want to have a side hustle where you're doing something using your degree, using your knowledge and experience, like Paula, you have a great side hustle if you want to keep doing bookkeeping with someone and do counseling work. That's super smart to me.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. So that's the
Yeah.
reason I kept doing what I do. I'll have just a few clients. I won't have as many.
Mhm.
Can I inject here real quick too?
Sure.
I did visit with a friend. She's a PhD here in the Dallas area. Asked her how she started her business. And she did this, I guess she came into the Dallas market about 4 years ago, and it said it took her about a year. And she said she learned and got certified in level 1 IFS therapy. She said there's a big need for it. She said I got a lot of referrals once I got on their list as a provider, which helped. She said she did get one insurance, and I forgot which company it was. I'll have to look up my file. And then eventually she could start letting those things go. She did some nights and weekends, and she said about 2 years, no more insurance, full pay. She's fully loaded, can't
Yep.
even take any clients. So her modes of therapy, I'm highly interested in IFS anyway. So I'll probably do that training. She said it's a lottery process. So she said you might want to start trying to get in there now because it could take a year to get into the training program.
Yeah.
It is $4,000. So I'm probably going to wait till I try that till I get out of school.
Yep. So Richard Schwartz is the founder of IFS. The IFS Institute is the way you would go. Oh, I think I'm muted. So certifications are great. EFT, IFS, DBT, trauma. I got certified in a specific trauma training recently. Like Paula was saying, a benefit is that that specific model very in and out. You're very good at it, and you get networked inside of their network of folks. It does cost money, usually $3,000 to $4,000 to get trained in whatever the certification is. It just depends on what you want to do. IFS itself is, I think if y'all want next session, I can go over give you overview of IFS. I can go over some of these models if y'all want. I use IFS with clients now. I'm not trained. I don't have a certification, but I've used it. I've learned it in my grad program. But yeah, to Paula's point, if you become certified in something, you can actually market yourself that way too, and that can be helpful too. So my thought about the self-pay rate is it does take 18 to 24 months, probably 20 months, to kind of get fully going, fully booked, charging kind of what you want, and it just takes a little bit of time. But a lot of that, when you have good results, people are going to talk about it too. You're going to I don't do a ton of marketing anymore. I just do a lot of word of mouth. That's kind of how I keep my clients. Now I do other things too, other than my private practice. So I'm busy working in other places. But I think there's lots of different ways to go about it that I think are good. And I would say just kind of network with each other. And some people are gonna be love kind of hustling and being an entrepreneur, and some people don't. Some people just say, hey, I want to go work at a facility. I don't want to worry about the rest of it, and that's fine too. You can go whichever direction you want to go. It's really up to you. So the one question I get sometimes I feel like someone just emailed me this too. Sometimes I get questions about like teaching, like if you want to teach. Traditionally, you have to have a PhD to teach in university. That's why people get PhDs most of the time. I got a PhD because I wanted to teach and I knew that. Some junior colleges now or community colleges now will take people with master's degrees and let them teach. You can do that too. That's just another avenue. If you like teaching, if you like that trained teaching kind of atmosphere, you can go that way too. Typically in our field, the master's degree is what's, it's a terminal degree. In other words, you don't need a PhD to be a therapist or a counselor. Just a master's is all you need. But if you want to teach, most universities require a PhD. I get students ask about that every once in a while. So if you're interested in moving further, like taking your academics further and getting a PhD, and there's multiple, doctoral programs that you can jump into. Not just counseling or therapy or psychology, like education. Like Dr. Heber's his doctorate's in education actually. He's just an LMFT too. So there's multiple ways to kind of go depending on the direction you want to go. So I do get students ask about that as well. So okay, it's a lot of information. Any questions about any of that stuff? And I'm going to go over a couple of things that I missed in our next class. I'm going to go over some of that. Any other questions or comments or anything about what we're talking about today?
I was just going to comment on Paula when she said her friend was overbooked and using that as a good networking source to getting clients.
Sorry, was that a question? I'm sorry.
Oh, just a comment on how to get new clients is the overload from other therapists.
Let people know.
Well, you definitely should network with each other for sure. I mean, I think the biggest mistake that mental health practitioners can make is feel like we're in competition with each other, because we're not. There's plenty of clients. I don't know if y'all have seen the stats on like depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation across ages. I mean, we're not going to be hurting for clients. So we're not necessarily like, competing with each other. You know what I'm saying? Like we should be working together. Like there's things that I'm good at and there's things I am not good at. Like there's clients that I probably would not be great at, but I know people that are good with those clients and I can refer them to people. So the more we network with each other and kind of know, what each other do, the better the better help we're providing people. I bring that up because when I was, especially in my master's program, there was kind of this competition, it seemed like this competitive air about some of the people I was in school with, and even not necessarily in my PhD, but I don't know. I just don't feel like we should compete with each other. I mean, there's plenty of clients to work with. So I think networking with people is super important. Okay, now.
I'm sorry, first part of this class, but you mentioned the video from Chris Kendall. Is that on your site or our syllabus site?
It's on Moodle.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yep. Yeah, it's on Moodle.
Dr. Bernard, can I stay after the Zoom and just ask you a really quick question about something that's like, I think that you'll know about, but I don't think anyone cares about but me.
Well, probably everyone cares about it. But yes, I can do that. Absolutely. No problem.
Okay. I doubt
No
anyone will
problem.
actually care about it.
Yeah, no
Okay.
problem.
Dr. Bedard, I
Okay.
have the same thing. It's something very specific to my situation. So I was wondering if you have a few minutes after the session.
I do.
Full brief. Thank you.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. If everyone, if no one has any more questions, you're welcome to take off. I don't know if these are private questions, if people want to stay, or if you guys care if people stay, but I'm just going to stay. And when everybody's done, that's when I'm going to leave. Unless it's about 11:30, then I have to leave. But I've got about 30 minutes.
I'm going to yoga. Bye, y'all.
Have fun.
Bye-bye,
Thanks.
honey.
Bye, hun.
Go yoga.
Next class date.
Okay, so can I ask you this question? So I want to do I'm considering either Prepare, Enrich, or Symbis for like premarital like assessments, because I work with couples also. And so I was comparing the two, and my supervisor recommended that Symbis might be like a more modern one. I was specifically looking for something that is like secular and inclusive of like LGBTQ couples and like different alternate relationship structures or anything really, but just something that wasn't like real like Christian. And it seems like Symbis is like the people that started that are very, very religious. It's used very like widely by churches, but I think that the same thing may be somewhat true with Prepare and Enrich. So I don't know. I wanted your take on that.
Yeah, I think you're right. Symbis is definitely marketed. It's actually marketed towards churches. So I'm actually certified in both, and I use both. Here, this would be interesting. I would love to see if you find something out about more inclusive types of premarital assessments. I'm sure they're out there. I am not aware of them, but I'd love to see if you find out something about that, because that would be interesting. Symbis itself has got a heavy spiritual focus. Prepare and Rich does too, but it's if I was the
So you dropped out. I can't hear the sound. It's like all garbled. Can you say that again?
Oh, you're breaking up.
Yeah, you're breaking up too. Oh, it might, I don't know.
Can you hear me now?
Is that better?
Is that better?
Yeah. Can you say that again?
I think Prepare probably more secular if we're going to compare them. And it's more practical. I think it gives a lot of really good tools to people. Symbis is fine. Symbis works great too. But I don't know, honestly, I don't know of one that's more inclusive to LGBTQ.
Okay. What about like gender roles? Are they really like sort of traditional in terms of gender roles and expectations?
They don't come out and say that. They just tell you, here's what you grew up with, here's your personality type, and then you kind of decide. And I actually just make that a discussion. I talk about that just in general anyway, no matter who I'm working with, because some of that's religiously based and some of that's just like based on your childhood. So I bring it up anyway. So you could do that just regard. I actually do that with all the couples I work with too. Anyway.
So is it unethical to use one of those two assessments with like a couple that is like not religious and like maybe like a gay couple or something? Like, is that because you're not supposed to use an assessment that's not like normed on that population? I mean, it's specifically not really for that population, but maybe there are still like some helpful things.
I wouldn't use it on same-sex couples personally.
You wouldn't? Okay.
Because it's not, like you said, norm, but it's also it's not a valid assessment. It's not reliable or valid because of the way it was designed. That's why I don't know of any inclusive premarital type assessments. I really don't. Now I know that like other marital assessments have been normed on a variety of couples, but
like
not but not premarital. That I don't know of any, actually.
So maybe just use like the Gottman assessments instead of, I don't know. Okay. It seems like, sometimes there's something of value there, and like to throw everything out, even though there's some value, is kind of sad too,
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
I mean, the training is fairly inexpensive for both to become certified. Now Texas does.
It's like $200.
Yeah, Texas does Together in Texas as a. You can actually do certifications with that too. That would be something to look into. We do 8 sessions. When they do 8 sessions, they get X amount of dollars off their marital license, and they waive some of the other things. And that's been around for about 10 or 15 years, maybe 20 years now. Yeah. But I don't know of any other assessments. That's a good question. I don't know the answer to.
Okay, that's right. I just wanted your like inside view of
Yeah.
like how non-inclusive was it? How religious was
They're
it?
not,
Okay,
they're not
thank you.
inclusive. They're very religious and not inclusive, I would say. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you.
you're welcome. I think Sarah had a question.
Yes, sir. So my question is very weird. So I'm working, I'm doing my practicums at C Behavioral Health Center at Texas Health Presbyterian.